One of the things that we did in Guatemala that broke me was they called it the dump. And so there was a huge dump, and people that didn't have homes built tents, and they were living in the dump. And they would take Coca-Cola bottles and take the plastic wrapping, and they'd make bracelets and jewelry with it, and they would sell that. And that was how they would make money to feed their children and take care of their kids. You had to walk through a cemetery. The crypts were open. People were robbing from them. We had an armed guard taking us through, and we got to the edge of where the dump was getting ready to begin. And they started off by telling us that several people had died the day before because the dump opened up and swallowed them, and there's nothing they can do when that happens because it's so deep there. And I remember just standing there sobbing, thinking, do we not know how good we have it at home?
So we're with Jim and Vicki Gotay. Okay, welcome to Saturday's State of Mind. I'm really excited about this particular conversation because I think you two lead this incredible life of purpose, and I think it will really inspire a lot of people to hear your story. And I kind of want to explore it a little bit of a different way, Jess. So I don't know how many of these interviews that we've done, just a handful up until this point, but we always start at the beginning. We've talked about childhoods and where you were born, that sort of thing. And then eventually we get to retirement. I'd like to do a Christopher Nolan thing here.
Oh,
like
memento?
Yeah, and okay. I want to start kind of at the present and then maybe work our way backwards a little bit. Okay. You think you might be able to handle that?
Absolutely.
And I think it's somewhat appropriate because we met when you were already retired.
Yes.
You know, you came on board with Arcadia, I think 22 or 23, not all that long ago.
But 22, I think, honey. Yeah.
Okay. So you had been retired. Let's take one brief step back. What had you done for work prior to retiring?
I was a sales rep for Newark Electronics, inside sales, telephone sales.
And I was a research and development lighting engineer with Osram, Sylvania for 31 years.
Okay. So you guys were working pretty hard, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then when you retired, you started to go into a different sort of work. At least that's what it seems like when I hear about all your volunteer efforts and passion projects. How would you start to even unpack and describe what retirement has looked like for you two, say over the last 1 or 2 years?
Wow. So for me, it's all about service. I like to help people. I like the joy that comes with helping people when you see their reaction to it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Let me serve in any aspect, whether it's, we did the food bank last week. We've been on mission trips with our church. We've been on mission trips alone. When we can see the results of the work we've done, that's where I get my most joy from.
Living a life of purpose is what keeps us moving and motivated because, you get into a routine working every day, going to work. And when you stop doing that, we tried at that time to find something else to do and not just sit home. And we started traveling. We went to Central America 9 times for mission trips. We built orphanages. We built vocational schools, churches. That was our plan. Then COVID hit and it slowed down the situation because we couldn't travel. So we had to reinvent ourselves one more time. And we were looking for how to help people within our community. And you guys came along and we've been able to now kind of merge some of what we wanted to do with your mission, including, Special Olympics and the food bank. So we were really excited. We really enjoyed doing some of that work and being part of the community and helping people. That keeps us young.
How did you decide that giving back and going on missions was going to be something that was so now central to who it is that you are and what your retirement was going to be? Take us back maybe a little bit, maybe to the first mission or something that when you looked at each other and you said, you know what, we should be doing this more often. What was that like?
I think it started for us and because of a situation I had been in my 30s, my late 30s. I started sponsoring a young girl from Rwanda through our church, Compassion International.
Okay.
And we sent letters, we sent donations. I mean, a simple donation of $50 bought a piece of farmland.
Yeah,
for
my
them.
mother had done something very, very similar. I think with a woman from Rwanda, if I wasn't not mistaken.
Women's International.
That's exactly what it is.
So,
yeah.
Because of that, one of the things I'd always wanted to do was to go on a mission trip, because our church was involved in going on mission trips, but I had small children. And my first husband, who passed away, said, "Hon, I don't really want you going to Africa right now. You got 2 little kids. God forbid something happen. And then I'm alone to raise 2 children." He says, "That's not fair." And I said, "You're right." So by the time Jim and I got married, I still had that. I want to go on a mission trip. I want to just see what it's like. I just had this feeling in my heart that was a purpose for me at some point in my life. And so when we started going to Granite United Church, they started talking about mission trips that they would go on. Guatemala, Honduras, Jamaica. And I looked at him one Sunday at church, and I had mentioned to him that I wanted to do that. And I turned and I looked at him and said, "Hey, let's do one of these mission trips." And he looked at me and he said, "I can't say no to you anymore." He says, "It's something you repeatedly have asked me for." And that's where we started. And so our first mission trip was to Guatemala.
Okay.
And that's why we retired early, actually, because she retired at 57 and I retired at 60. And that was our purpose. Actually, we thought about even living in Guatemala in a situation where orphans age out of the system and they just turn them loose on the street. So we were trying to establish what they call an hogar, which is a orphanage place where they could sleep and train. So it was a coffee farm, and we were teaching them how to process coffee and roast it. And we also had to do machine work with metal work. So we built a school there too, and we were supposed to go there, and that's when pandemic hit. So we had a plan, and then
it changed.
It changed.
Well, I'm glad you're unpacking some of that, because I feel like a cynical person might say, Guatemala and Jamaica, this sounds like a vacation, sounds kind of nice, but could you unpack a little bit about what you sometimes experience on a mission?
Third world country, both of them. Certain parts of Jamaica are very beautiful. Certain parts of Guatemala are very beautiful. Atitlan with the lake there is gorgeous. But where we were, it was a very poor community.
Reservation.
Mayan reservations, that type of thing. But one of the things that we did in Guatemala that broke me was they called it the dump. And so there was a huge dump, and people that didn't have homes built tents, and they were living in the dump. And they would take Coca-Cola bottles and take the plastic wrapping, and they'd make bracelets and jewelry with it, and they would sell that. And that was how they would make money to feed their children and take care of their kids. And so we were there. We had to walk through a cemetery, which all of the crypts were open. People were robbing from them. We had an armed guard taking us through, and we got to the edge of where the dump was getting ready to begin. And they started off by telling us that several people had died the day before because the dump opened up and swallowed them, and there's nothing they can do when that happens because it's so deep there. And I remember just standing there sobbing, thinking, do we not know how good we have it at home?
They were making their homes out of the trash.
Right.
So homes were built not,
They're making a living out of the trash.
They
too,
did.
They made caves
literally,
within, so they'd pile up the trash and build a cavity within the trash, and they lived there. And there were always fires. I mean, there were 10 people dying a week in that dump through fires or it collapsed.
Collapse on top of itself. And what we were doing there is across the street, there was a church that we sponsored that had a feeding center for the children. And again, as we stated earlier, they age out at about 13 years old. They don't get any more help coming in. It's for the younger kids. So we bring in Crocs for the kids and feed them a meal and play with the children. And so you're seeing this, and I'm looking at how little they have, and they're getting a pair of Crocs and they have a bowl of stew, and they think that the world is fabulous because they only have a new pair of shoes to put on their feet. And they're so grateful. And I think back and I look and I say to myself, I remember when, the kids might have been disappointed because a particular video game they wanted was out of the question. And I'm thinking, you couldn't have no food, no clothing, no shoes on your feet. And these children were so happy.
It gives you perspective.
It gives you perspective. And a lot of video was taken. And so I'd send it home to the boys. And we still get asked questions by some of their friends. Tell us more about what you did there. So it changes you in a way that I've never been changed before.
It does seem like a lot of people, in the States are isolated to some of this. And I don't know if it's always like self-inflicted, just like, let's not worry about what's going on there, or just the access to information. It's not so prevalent. I mean, so with the missions, did you guys really learn most of this through your church? Is that how you come to find out and be involved?
We did different things. We went to several of these, so they had names for us. I was in the military, and at 17, they offered me $50 a month to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, which I thought was a good idea
right,
at the
sounds
time.
Fun.
$50 sounded like a lot of money. So I was in special forces, and I traveled the world, and we're in places I don't even know where I was. But I always wondered what I could use this for. And what I did in missions, they would call her comfort, and that was protection, because I did security mostly for the group. So when we went to places like the dump or a village, which is a lot of poor people, and they see outsiders, it could be a little scary. I would always be the person to bring up the rear and make sure everybody was in a place they should be, and
And I was the comfort. If somebody was overwhelmed by what they saw, they'd come to me for love or a hug, or Mama. I was Mama Bear. He was Papa Bear. Mama Bear, this is breaking my heart. And I said, well, what does Pastor always say to us? Pray to the Lord. Lord, break my heart for the things that break your heart. And I said, we prayed that prayer. Now it's happening. And I said, and we can't go back and say, I changed my mind, God. I don't want to do that anymore. I said, so you just you go with the flow and you say, well, this is a purpose. We're here for a purpose. And whether it's to comfort the people that have come on the mission trip or comfort the children and the moms and dads that we meet, that's our purpose, is to bring hope.
That's such an amazing, different skill sets that are both, so important and needed there. But, when you were talking just a little while ago, Jim, you're saying that, teaching people about how to roast coffees or, build houses, do you have to have a particular skill set to go on these missions? I mean, if I know nothing about construction, am I of value?
So we form teams before we set out to these missions, and we get specialists. So we bring electricians, we bring carpenters, we bring, people that do construction. And with their guidance, we're able, and we do learn on the job how to do certain things. And so it's a situation where when you go, so one thing being in the military taught me when I was younger is when you go through hardship with a fellow soldier, you become a brother because you depend on each other so much. So when you go abroad and you're serving, usually there was 10 to 20 of us. We depend on each other. It's all we have each other there because you don't know anybody else. So you build this camaraderie where you become, very close. And we have several daughters and sons.
Mission daughters and sons.
That call us Mama and Papa Bear. And we see them periodically sometimes. And so, but the bond stays there, even doing situations where we went to the food bank. I mean, we met people there. And when you're helping people and you're serving, you create a bond. And then within 2-3 hours, we met people that now we know by name, and we're making plans to see them again. I mean,
hopefully in another function.
And even with Liz Nolan, we've created a nice bond with her, because I see similarities of her that I am. And so it's fun looking at somebody that reminds you of yourself. So you create these bonds, and these bonds are such a wonderful thing to have, especially in these times where, there's uncertainty and anger and division.
Yes.
So, coming
Breaks my
together
heart.
is such a wonderful thing, after the pandemic and in these times. So,
Yeah, I've heard people comment that it should almost be required service in this country to give back or go on missions, because you gain this super valuable perspective, right? And, I'm guilty of this sometimes. You're at the grocery store and there's a line, and I come home like, oh, life is so terrible because I waited in line in a place with infinite food, right?
And
And
air conditioning.
you've,
And yeah.
been in these environments where people are literally living in a dump. I wonder, though, a little bit, what's it like when the mission is nearing its end and you're leaving? How do you grapple with the fact that these people are still going to be in the dump and you're going back to America? Have you struggled with any feelings of guilt or separation from these people post-mission? And how do you manage that?
Definitely separation. I miss the people that I've met, the people that you connect with. But my faith comes into this a lot. So it's like, okay, so I don't get to see them again maybe till the next time we go. Because a lot of times when we go to a repeat, like Guatemala, we've been several times, you see the same people as far as the leaders. We call them the mamacitas. They're the ones that cook for us at the Hogar where we stay. But you get to go see these children again. And some of the children in the orphanage that are right down from where we stay have been there since they were babies. So we've seen them grow from a 2-year-old to a 12-year-old. And what I love about this particular orphanage is they try to place them when they start to age out. They try to get them into that other place where the coffee people are, because they have like little homes that have parent figures. And so they try to place them there so that they're not just out on the street. So yeah, sometimes it's hard. I miss them. I know I've said to them often, I wish I was still there. I miss, there's just such a connection with them. And again, my faith comes into this, so I have a closer connection, I feel, with the Lord. And so when I'm there, I feel like my purpose is clearly defined. Where when I come home, sometimes I feel like I'm wishy-washing around. Where am I going next? And that's why being with you guys here and seeing that the things that you do for service, it gives us purpose again.
we would say, we had a saying that we would be going back to the fake world when we would go back, because the real world is where we were. So you really don't realize, like you said, all the blessings we have. And when you're there, it's the basic necessities that are so important. I mean, water. We would take water filtration systems to install them in these Indian reservations, because they're drinking out of just the street, the water that's flowing down from the streets, and they get sick. They die over it. So a simple Home Depot 2.5 gallon bucket with a filtration system that through technology, we've been able to develop in this country, gives them water for a whole year. And it's fresh, clean water. And they just, over that,
Yep.
Their eyes open up like it's a miracle what they have in front of them. So
That's so cool. Well, thank you for sharing. We're going to return to retirement in a bit, but now we're going to go a little bit further back. You two, it seems like if it's not an interesting origin story, I think you have a bit of an atypical origin story in terms of where your relationship started, right? Do you want to take us a little bit back in your history and describe a little bit about what it was like, say, meeting each other and figuring out that this was going to be a partnership that led to all the wonderful things that you're describing?
So I'll start by saying that Jim was a customer of mine
Okay.
at Newark Electronics.
You're
so I was,
fraternizing with the customer base.
well, no, not initially.
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay.
So when I started working with Jim as a customer, My first husband was still alive. So I had, my husband, Rick, my 2 little kids. And so we would chat often about things we did on the weekend because Jim was a divorced father. So, I took my kids here. Where'd you take your kids? And we'd kind of swap off and we'd go to those different places.
Things like Ruggles Mines or the fun things on the
fun
weekend.
things to do. But basically what happened, probably about 6 or 7 months into our working relationship, Jim says to me, "Hey, I'm really enjoying talking to you. You're really sweet." He says, "How about we go out for dinner some night?" And I kind of chuckled and I went, "Well," I said, "I'm really flattered, darling." I said, "But I'm a married woman." I said, "Very happily." And I said, "And my husband is 6'2" and he blocks out the sun. So I don't think he'd be too happy about that. And he was very respectful. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." It's like, no problem. Well, from there, friendship built. And we became very close. So probably maybe 10, 12, 13 years later, Rick passed away very unexpectedly. And Jim showed up at his celebration of life. And it was a very busy celebration of life. There's probably close to 500 people there. Never realized how loved my first husband was until that day. And people were saying wonderful, beautiful things. And I'm sitting there and I'm just listening. And all of a sudden I hear his voice. Now, mind you, I think I had met him once at a show. But because of the type of work I did, telephone sales, voices. I knew voices. I knew immediately who I was speaking to. And he starts to speak. I'm like, wait a minute. I know that voice. And he stands up and he says, I was really worried for Vicki and her boys, but I see that she has a great church family here. So, I'm just so happy that she has this. My only regret is that I never got to meet Rick. He was supposed to meet Rick the weekend after he passed away. So Rick passed away on a Thursday. He was supposed to come over Saturday with his kids and meet Rick. Never got to happen. So what Jim ended up doing for me, 2 things. He was a friend, but he was also a customer. So as my friend, he would call me after work hours. "Are you okay? Do the boys need anything? Are you still breathing? Are you eating? Anything I can do to help?" Sometimes he'd call, I'd be sobbing like a baby. Other times it would be a great day and we'd have a great conversation. Then we had our business relationship. Call, he'd have a list of products for me to quote and send to him, whatever. And the relationship started to build. So about 5 years after my husband passed away, I started saying, "Hey, when are you going to ask me out?" "Oh, no, you're my best friend. I can't go out with my best friend."
I wasn't very successful relationships up to that period. And I was in my 50s already.
Yeah.
So.
It was such a great relationship. You're like, I don't want to
You
ruin
don't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
But I said to him, I don't know if you know, but the person you go out with and you marry should be your best friend.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I said, because you're going to spend the rest of your life with them. And I said, and that's the best way to start a relationship.
I had no clue.
And he's like, and so
This is why I've been doing it raw.
Right. So it was no.
Yeah.
Until about December of that year. And do you want to pick up the story from here, dear?
She pretty much went after me in the aspect.
Big time.
Because I was very skeptic. And it was all me. It had nothing to do with her. Because I didn't know I could be the type of man she needed. And Rick was he's an awesome man. And to live in that shadow was overwhelming for me. And I just didn't think I could measure up. So she gave me the first peck on the lips.
That wasn't a peck.
And it was all... then just fell into place from there. And it's the best thing that's happened to me because it took me, my plan was to retire early still, but my plan was to just live on cruise ships and travel, and just be, a lone wolf and try to enjoy, my last few years. And she just transformed my life, and I couldn't be more blessed.
That's wonderful. So how long have you been together for now?
It'll be 11 years in July that we've been married.
Okay.
13 years together as a couple. But
and
we've
how
known
many
each
years have
other
you known?
30 years.
30, wow. So yeah, so about 15 years, a little more than that before there was ever a relationship,
Yes.
a romantic relationship built. That's amazing.
That is a crazy story.
You really get to know somebody all that time, right?
I couldn't be shy because he wasn't getting it. And I saw something in him that
Yeah, life's too short,
Life's-
Jim, you know?
And it was. And one of the things that my first husband had said to me, he told me from day one, I'm going to die before you. And he says, you need to promise me that you won't sit in grief for the rest of your life. He says, you're a beautiful woman with so much love to give. Find someone else to love. Holy smokes, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
And
What happened to Rick?
well, the year that he passed away in May, we had gone to Toronto to see Toronto Blue Jays play the Red Sox. We were walking one evening, and he slipped off the sidewalk and fell. And he hurt his hip. And he limped around for months and, went to the doctor multiple times. He was having issues, heart trouble ran in his family. So he was monitoring everything closely because his father had his first heart attack at 47. And he was 47. So he was doing a lot of the follow-up stuff and making sure he was healthy. And I had an appointment the day before he had his last physical. And I said to the doctor, listen, he fell in May and hurt his hip. He's still limping. Something's wrong. And so he had his appointment the next day, got a clean bill of health with his heart, cholesterol, everything. And they set up an appointment for an x-ray on his hip for the next day. Blood clot let loose on his left hip, went through the left ventricle of his heart and basically blew up his heart. So it was rugged. Both of the boys were home with him when it happened. They had just finished CPR through the Boy Scouts and they couldn't save their dad. And they struggle with that still to this day.
How old were your kids at the time when he passed?
The kids, Rick, he was 47.
And how old were your children?
Kids were, the oldest boy was 15, the youngest boy was 13.
Oh, man. It's a terrible thing.
It was rugged. It was rugged for a while. And I thank God every day that he came into my life because the boys love him. They respect him. They call him Pops. And there are times that they'll call him for advice and bypass me. And I don't care. Go talk to him. He knows how to be a dad. I don't. I'm a mom. I'm a great mom, but I can't be a dad. So yeah, but it was rugged. That was a rugged situation for a while, but we're on the other side of it now. And
thank you for sharing. So much of what we try to preach around here is valuing your time appropriately. And I think a lot of times we misconstrue either how much time we might have or the nature of how rapidly things can change. Particularly for women, I was shocked some years ago to learn the average age of widowhood is something like 55, I think, around there, which is really young. It doesn't totally make sense when you look at other statistics for life expectancy, but when you dig into it, there's some truth there, and it puts things in perspective, right? That you've got to, strike while the iron's hot, enjoy yourself, enjoy the time that you have, and that sort of thing.
Eat steak while you still have teeth. Remember
Amen.
That's right. We do have a tremendous amount of clients on second marriages,
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I mean, we don't track this with any kind of meaningful metrics, but just anecdotally, at least a third, maybe as many as a half of people that we work with are on a second marriage, either because of death or divorce or something similar. How you're both on your second chance at love, right? How has this new chapter been? And have you been rediscovering new things, or how do you complement each other? What's it been like?
this first.
Well, second time around, you learn. At times, my kids from the prior marriage get sometimes a little confused on how I changed, because there's a difference in age between my kids from my first marriage to our kids now. And you parent different as you get older. You learn. And that's one thing I prayed and I've been able to do, I believe, is to not make the mistakes we made the first time. At times when you're starting out, you're going to school. I went to school for 20 years to get my engineering. So I was always working. or I was always in school. So I really didn't have a lot of time with my kids. Like I was able to when she came into my life, because by then my career was well established, and I was able to give them a lot more time and understanding. And so you learn, you try to assimilate the mistakes you made in the early years and try to make it better. And finding the right partner, I had no clue until she presented herself and gave me enough confidence to believe in myself to be the man I should be and could be, because my confidence level was low. And she believed in me. And finding a person that believes in you really brings out the best in you. And I was able to change my life totally around, because I went from, being, I was in the military, then I was CIA. I was very career orientated. And I never had friends because I couldn't do that type of situation in the job I did. So I was always a loner. And when she's so social and friendly and happy.
Sometimes.
So she offsets that other side of me. And on top of that, she put me in a different mindset to be able to not just serve my country, but to serve people. And my life is service. I'll do for people
What you won't do
what
for
I wouldn't
yourself.
do for myself. Like, even the little things like walking. If we have an opportunity to help our kids walk their dogs and do extra, we would do that because it gets us moving and keeps us active. But it's just taught me that second chances, take advantage of them, learn from your mistakes, and believe in yourself.
And always listen to each other. And I fell so deeply in love with him, I couldn't imagine my life without him. And that's why I went after him so hard.
And we try not to go to bed
Never
angry.
go to bed angry.
Even we take turns. If we can't settle it, we do not sleep.
One of us doesn't sleep.
Okay.
It's like a guard thing. She's sleeping, I'm awake. I'm awake, she's sleeping, until we settle it. And
Not plotting each other's demise, but really thinking about how to.
I don't like it when we're upset with each other. It hurts my heart. So I've got to fix it.
So we try to have that conversation. And I've learned, and I was raised up in a tough situation in the projects, and I was born in the Bronx. So I was a city kid. And I was, even though my parents were Hispanic, my mom's from Spain. So I was very fair skinned in a situation where I stuck out like a sore thumb wherever I went. And then we moved out of that situation. But then my father got an opportunity to work in Puerto Rico when I was 8. So all of a sudden I moved to Puerto Rico, and I did not know Spanish, and I stuck out there too. So that situation of always being kind of outside the circle led me to the military and led me to my early years, and some of the not so good characteristics I had back then. But God had another plan, and that's one thing we've learned is, we have our plans, but God has his.
And boy, does he have a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. There's a sense of destiny around you, too. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way. Or...
Absolutely. I've
Wild.
often said that everything that I went through from the time I was born till the time we got married was preordained by God. I went through a lot. I should be a bitter old woman, but I chose not to. I chose to choose joy. And I know that this is what God intended, was for us to be together, to be able to be at this point in our lives and do the things that we enjoy, but because he brought us to that. This is where you excel. This is what you need to do.
She's an incredible woman because she was brought up in the foster care system.
Are you really? Wow.
And it was a tough upbringing for her.
My dad got really sick when I was young, and he had MS, was put in hospital at 32. Never, not a hospital, a nursing home, never came out until after he passed away at 65. My mother and father had 5 of us and had to give all 5 of us up for adoption because my mom just couldn't deal with us. And so my older sister, my baby brother, and I, 3 of us went to the same foster home. 2 brothers went with an aunt and uncle. And I just kind of went through the system for a while, was adopted into a family alone. Everyone else went somewhere else. And unfortunately, that adoptive family wasn't everything they should have been. And it was a very rough life I had until I finally left home at 30. So, yeah.
It's like a Cinderella story for her.
And my foster parents were wonderful. If I could have stayed with them my entire life, I would have been very happy. But they couldn't afford us. They had kids of their own. Even with the money from the state, it just wasn't enough for them to be able to continue to care for us. So, I mean, I look at the system and you hear some of the stuff that's on the news, that Harmony Montgomery case. And I looked at him and I said, how can it still be the same as it was when I was a little kid? I said, my adoptive home should have been vetted differently. And I said, and I went into an abusive situation. And when the state would come every 3 months and they'd take me out alone to ask me how it was going. And I knew when my mother started acting really sweet that it was happening. And then, of course, before she would come, I would be told, if you tell them anything about what's going on, you're going to end up in an orphanage. So I was terrified to tell people that the situation I was in was horrible. And it just blows my mind that this many years later, you're still hearing that these things are happening out there.
I feel like we might actually be in a Christopher Nolan movie right now.
Going backwards?
The further back we go, the more wild and interesting this plot is getting.
What happens when you don't go in no order?
When you said that, I thought, this man has no idea where this is going to end.
So you were separated from your siblings.
Yes.
And also your parents.
Yes.
How did you endure all that as a young child?
Well, funny you should ask.
Yeah.
So I brought pictures, and there's one picture in there of me with my birth father, my daddy. Mm-hmm. I was daddy's little girl, and daddy was the milkman. And so daddy would sometimes take me on the milk truck. He worked for Turner's Dairy. Sometimes I'd go in the milk truck with him when he delivered in the morning. But one of my favorite things to do with daddy was sit down and read with him. And I was a huge Winnie the Pooh fan. And Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree had come out. And dad would sit with his legs crossed like this, put me on his leg, bounce me up and down, and read me Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree as many times as I wanted. And so when he got sick and he went away, I was devastated. That was my daddy. My mom was never that great. But daddy was everything to me. So when I was with foster care, they took me to see my dad every weekend in the nursing home. When I was adopted, things were different. Oh no, you just forget that you ever had another family. It's done. So one particular Christmas, it was my first Christmas with them. I was almost 7, and we were walking through Sears, and there was a big bin full of Winnie the Pooh stuffed animals. And oh, how I wanted one. Knew that I couldn't touch or I would have been in trouble. And right before Christmas, something happened. I was a naughty girl, and I was told I would never get any presents for Christmas that year. My adopted sister took me to go see Santa Claus. So I whispered in Santa's ear that I wanted that stuffed Winnie the Pooh because that was a connection for me with my daddy. And if I had that Winnie the Pooh, I could at least deal with the loss, because I would send Winnie the Pooh to him in my imagination to go tell my daddy how I was doing. That was the only thing under the Christmas tree that year. I didn't tell anyone in my family that I wanted that Pooh Bear. I have no idea how it got there or how anyone knew. It was the only present I got that year. I still have that Winnie the Pooh. It's over 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's over 50 years old. But that was my connection to my dad. And so I reunited with my dad when I was 33. I just had my first baby. He was about 6, 7, 8 months old. And we went to the nursing home to see him. And I kept saying to my husband, I don't know what to call him. Now keep him, you want to see him really go back? I used to sing in a country gospel band at the local nursing homes. I sang for my father once a month. I didn't know it was my father. However, I knew my father was in that nursing home because the gentleman that I sang with knew that was my father. He told my father it was me and said, she's not ready to meet you just yet. So I sang for my father, didn't know it. I talked to my father every time I went. My grandmother was there as well, talked to them. When I went in to see him officially, they opened the door for me. I walked in and he looked at me and he said, my baby girl, I knew you'd always come see me again. And I just fell into his arms. And he was in a Hoyer lift. He couldn't do anything for himself. But when I laid my head on his chest and cried, we cried together because of all the time we had missed. And I said, this is your grandson? This is your son-in-law? I said, Daddy, I can't believe that I'm finally here with you again. I went to see him every week on a Tuesday night. I'd pick the baby up and I'd drive up to Brentwood, to the Rockingham County Nursing Home, and visit with my father. So I reunited with him. But that's what held me together all those years. Even though I had lost so much, I knew the love of my earthly father was so real that I was able to survive through all the garbage I went through.
How much of this are you making up? Just stranger than fiction. Unbelievable. I'm afraid to ask you more questions.
I have one. Were you ever able to reunite with all your siblings? You said you were one of 5, right?
Yeah, I'm one of 5. So my sister is 9 years older than me. She lives in Pelham. We live in Windham. So I've reunited with her. We've been together since my oldest boy was 9 months old. So yeah, very close with her. My 2 beautiful nieces, her husband, the whole 9 yards. I met up with my baby brother and my 2 older brothers. And unfortunately, their lives were so messed up that I couldn't have them in my life because I didn't want my children subjected to their lifestyle. It just wasn't healthy for me, and it certainly wasn't going to be healthy for my children.
So you mean your 2 older brothers that went with your aunt and uncle, which you would maybe think, well, they're with family, but it just took a different road.
Honestly, they didn't stay there very long because they were in trouble with the law from the time they were like 13 years old. And I call them aunt and uncle. They were actually cousins on my mother's side. And they took them in and they didn't want to adhere to rules and they kept running away. So they eventually went back to my mother. But those cousins, Cousin Karen and Cousin Bob, they're like an aunt and uncle to me. And their 5 kids, 6 kids, I'm reunited with them. So they have a family property up in Stinson Lake that our great-grandfather built in 1924. We just had a 100-year celebration this past summer. So as much as I went through a lot of pain, I've been blessed to be able to reconnect with those that loved me so much. And they did love me. And I remember spending times at Stinson Lake with them as a little girl. So I do have some really beautiful memories of my childhood, despite that a good portion of it was very ugly. But I chose to focus on the stuff that made me feel loved and appreciated. And so that's where my joy comes from. I choose joy. I refuse to be that way.
Mm-hmm. With me, once I moved to Puerto Rico, my father got sick and he wasn't able to work. So it was me and my mom, and we adopted my little brother, Gary. And I was 10 at the time. And my mom was taking care of us. She couldn't work. So what she would do, my first job, which, would be that she would make food and I'd go to construction sites and sell the food. At the construction site, there were cornmeal, kind of the cylinder. They call them sorullos in Spanish. And I would sell out very quickly because they'd see all of a sudden a blue-eyed kid, that's 10 years old selling. And I would sell out like in 2 hours. I would sell hundreds of these things. And we were able to, to sustain until my father was able to get back on his feet. But my father was they were both farmers. They never finished high school. So they wanted us to be different. So they pushed us to be better, and they put us through high school, and we were supposed to go to college. And my brothers both dropped out because it was during Vietnam, and one of them was drafted, and my other brother refused to serve. So and they're so far apart in age. We're 8 years apart, each one of us. So we really never got to meet each other. So I was there with my mom and my little brother. And my father was sometimes a little abusive on my mom. So by the time I was 15, I got in the middle of these things. And I was roughed up quite a bit. And I was thrown out of my house by the time I was 16. So I was homeless, but I had graduated from school because they put a lot of time for me to be a better student. And I saw how my brothers did, so I wanted to be better. And so I graduated with honors at 16 from high school. And the deal was at 17, my father was going to sign and allow me to go to West Point. And I had the grades, I had everything but a signature from a congressman. And my father, for some reason, was not able to get the signature in time. It was a day late. So I was hoping to go there instead of living in the street, and it didn't happen. So then I moved back to the Bronx with my brother, and I stayed there for a little bit, but that was all trouble. I was starting to get in trouble, and there were a lot of drugs. This was in the 70s where things were.
You were one day away from getting into West Point because of this? Oh my gosh, this is a movie.
So I needed to go somewhere. So what I did, I got my body ready for basic training because, again, I was kind of a nerdy kid. I wasn't a tough kid. I was fast because I was able to run away from things, but I wasn't really a very tall or, gifted in any way physically to survive in the streets like I should have. So I went to train and get ready for basic training. At 17, I joined the Army. And that's when I didn't have a lot to live for. So in basic training, I would always distinguish myself because I was always, if something needed to be done or there was a fight to be done or whatever, I'd fight anybody, anywhere, anytime, any size. I had nothing to lose. So they saw these qualities in me and saw that I could maybe be part of Special Forces. I couldn't figure that out because Special Forces usually are 6-foot guys that are athletes. And even though I was fast, I was not. I looked like their kid. I was much shorter by a foot. And I figured out they wanted to make me a tunnel rat. A tunnel rat is something that developed in Vietnam, where the Viet Cong would tunnel and pop up in the middle of the night and pick off troops, U.S. troops in the jungle. So you would go in there without a flashlight and just a knife, and you go hunting, or they hunt you. Well, Vietnam was done by the time I went, and I said, well, this will be good training because I like martial arts and stuff of that sort. So I learned to use a knife very well and do, hand-to-hand combat very well. I was trained, and I really enjoyed it, but I thought I would never have to use this. And before I knew it, I was in a situation where I was in a tunnel in Central America and South America with drug lords because they would do the same thing. They tunnel.
Was this while you were in the service, or this was a while? This was when I was with Special Forces, and back then, Special Forces was like the CIA. You weren't part of the Army. You were
like Delta Force. You were a situation where they would send you to places you're not supposed to be. So no tattoos, no name tag, no rank, no name, no nothing. Because if you get caught, you're not there. So I ended up volunteering for every mission I could. I turned into point man. I was pretty much trying to kill myself. That way my mom could get the money for my insurance. Because it was $20,000 and it was a lot of money, I thought, that my mom could get to help her. And my father, because he still had health issues. But nothing happened. You know, I volunteered for every mission I could to try to end myself pretty much. And it
But
never
you were the
happened.
best tunnel rat there was. No,
He was.
Well, God had another plan for me. And
That destiny thing we talked
and
about.
Right.
that's why destiny is so important, because, you know, now where we're at, we just want to be part of making the world a little better and serving people still after all these years. And again, I had a brief stint with the CIA after my military, but it was more of the same. And I was trying to form a family because I fell in love at the end of my first tour in the Army. And I started thinking more about being home than doing what I was doing. And I was jeopardizing others because of me having, you know, now something in my heart. So I had to stop doing that type of situation because I was going to jeopardize not just myself, but my team. And same thing happened when I went into the CIA. I started traveling again, and I didn't want to do that type of work. So I got out of that, and I ended up pushing grocery carts, because this was back in Jimmy Carter age, where when you got out of the military, because even though you had your tour and you served your time, when you got out, the times were tough back then. They wouldn't even give you unemployment. So I couldn't find a job. So I ended up pushing grocery carts at Star Market in Nashua.
Seems like the skill set doesn't exactly translate.
I didn't want to be a policeman. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to get shot at anymore, pretty much. So I ended up starting from scratch, and I was able then to get a job as a assembler in electronics in Nashua and Hudson with Maycom. And from there, I just kept on working and going to night school because they were paying for school. And I became a tester, then I became a technician, then I became a junior engineer, and kept going. And I ended up, after several years, becoming an engineer. You know, I was bankrupt twice because after my divorce, I left everything to the kids because I had 2 kids. So I was living in my car in a rest area by 30. And I was able to put my life together because I found this job with Osram Sylvania, which was Sylvania at the time. And it was a good paying job. And I was able to start building my future a little bit. But then at 50, well, I dated a lady for many years, but she never wanted to marry me. And by 50, I got tired of waiting. And I left again, and I lived in my car again. And I went bankrupt the second time because my daughter was in UMass Lowell. And she went for 8 years, and it became...
Professional student.
I made the mistake of telling my oldest, which she was, that she could go to school as long, because I never had that opportunity, as long as she wanted. And she did.
She got good grades.
And she has 4 degrees.
Okay.
So, and she's very well prepared, and she's successful. But on the way there, I couldn't afford to pay anymore. Everything, you know, because it's not just tuition. And I know you don't pay tuition till after they graduate, but there's books,
Sure.
and I still had another child. So I ended up going bankrupt for the second time at 50. So I was very blessed because in 10 years, I was able to put my life together, meet her, take our investments. And what happened was, to tell you the truth, I was an engineer by trade, but I never could finish my degree because during my divorce, I hit this mental block with calculus. I got through calculus 1 and calculus 2. I couldn't get past calculus 3. I tried tutors. I tried everything. I couldn't do it. So now I'm sitting there and saying, I have 3 years and I'm nothing yet. And it took me 20 years to get that. And I was starting to lose credits because it was so long. I was going to night school. So what I ended up doing at that time is I started taking electives, and I read about finance, and I was looking, I had my own internet company, failed. I tried several things, and finance came up. So I took all my electives in micro and macroeconomics and to statistics, and I trained myself to learn about finance. And I was able to then, back then we didn't have Robinhood and stuff. So I would take Monopoly money, literally, and make notes in my notebook on what stocks and how to invest.
So cool.
And I rode Yahoo for the first time to a little bit of success. Then I grabbed on to Google, and I grabbed on to Apple, and I was able to take the investments we had together in 10 years and made them 10 times more.
Apply that logic that you had learned. Jim.
One of the reasons, I really enjoyed doing it. And, a lot of people, when they talk about finance and planning, their eyes glaze over.
That was me.
I took my engineering skills to hone my financial skills. And what happened with us is we had several financial advisors that weren't living up to what we were expecting. And I would tell them, and this is where Mike and I had our first real good conversation, and I liked what I heard from him was, I told him, if I'm doing better than you, I don't need you. And I fired several of them down the line, and we were going to seminars trying to meet somebody that can align with me, because I'm kind of difficult at times, because I require excellence. And
that's what you deserve,
at
right?
that time, I was very skeptic of people. I was not trusting anybody. And so I thought I would never find anybody because I know I'm getting older. And as I get older, I want to have somebody I could trust and say, these people think like me. These people are going to serve my best interests and watch over my wife if something happens to me and my kids.
Share similar values.
And then came, Arcadia. We went to one of the seminars, and I liked what I saw. And we started going to a few seminars and learning, and I got comfortable with talking to the guys. And one thing I like about working with you guys is we could have a conversation, and it's a business conversation, yet when it's done, I felt like I was heard. And there was an agreement. It wasn't just, we had people that tell us, well, this is my job. Your job is just to sit and watch me.
It's not like that.
And
it's wonderful.
Yes. And I don't want to tell people what to do, but I want to feel that I'm in good hands, knowing, because I still keep an account on my side that I play with, and I look at my percentages compared to what you guys do.
Not a monopoly money anymore.
No monopoly money this time.
But it's small amounts, because
Right.
I like to have my money with, where I'm making, where my bread is buttered is here. But I track percentages.
Yep.
And for the first time during we've had a small downturn, you guys are tracking with me, which I'm tickled pink. And I haven't even told Mike this, but I'm very happy. For the first time, I've been able to find somebody that really, 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 I feel comfortable.
Feel understood.
And it's Saturday, every day, and I could sleep well at night, swan, like I call it, right? Where I don't have to worry so much about, okay, I'm in good hands. I'm with people that are thinking alike, and that as I get older and I can't, because let's face it, in time I will decline, and we're getting into the golden years now that we have 10, 15 years of really quality time, and we try to take care of ourselves and work out and try to maximize ourselves. But I'm in good hands right now, and I'm really happy over that. And I thank you guys.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you.
I'm glad you
And
feel that way.
Jim, if that was your submission to become our spokesperson, I think we could talk. You might be hired here.
There you go.
Yeah,
I really
quite
appreciate all the
honestly.
I have a lot of
words.
time on my hands.
This to us is more than a business. It's a bit of a mission. Sitting around and just playing with money and spreadsheets all day at times has its appeal. I'm a bit of a nerd and, Jess does her things on her side of the business, but at the end of the day, it's impact
Right.
and forming relationships and having community. And that to us is what it's all about. So to hear that from you, just you have no idea how much it means to us. And I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
I know we're running short on time. We're going to have, if you'll ever do it, we're going to have to have you guys back at some point. There's so much more that we didn't unpack
It's going to
about
be like
your
a 6-part
families and
mini-series.
careers. Yeah, we could do a mini series. That would be cool. So, like, in the interest of trying to wind things up for hopefully our first session here, we have the rest of our lives to look forward to. And you've already said it, you just did, right? About how important it is to live fearlessly, like every day is Saturday. What kind of Saturday declaration would you two want to make at this point? If you could write your story, kind of map your destiny, what do you want your journey to look like going forward? And we'll do our part on our side of the fence here to keep tabs on you and hold you to it. So what does an ideal Saturday now look like for you two?
For me, I want to travel. And see places I've never seen before. I want to head to Norway. That's, I'm Norwegian. I want to see that. I want to go to Italy. That's the romance in me. I'm a hopeless romantic. And then very important to me is making sure that we are still alive to see the legacy for our children. I want to see them established. I don't want them to have to wait until we're gone to say, oh, well, Mom and Pop's left us a bunch of money, but they're not here anymore. I would rather see them settled in a house, starting their families, and be able to look at that and say, wow, I accomplished so much in my life. I did the good that I wanted to do. That's where I'm at right now.
What would you add, Jim?
Well, we are lined pretty close. That's what makes this work. We have a lot of the same goals. Legacy is super important to me, but I want living legacy. One of the last seminars we went to yours was so eye-opening. It helped me a lot. And one thing I learned is that you want our well-being. You want our dreams. You don't want your dreams. I mean, you have your own dreams, but you want us to live out our dreams. And that's what makes you unique. In my case, I want to give that living legacy to our kids, give them that piece of land, buy dirt, like they say. It's one of the things that how our financial situation is set in this country is land is important because it's not as taxable. And it's a legacy. If you buy enough of it, you're not just your kids can benefit from it, but your kids' kids can benefit from it. So that's part of our second plan. And it was inspired by one of your seminars down the road for us to do that. So we pretty much, since we've been aboard with Arcadia, we've changed some of that. I mean, we always had the living legacy situation, but what to do from there. And right now, we've also are trying different budgeting situations to not just prepare for now, but prepare for later.
Mm-hmm.
And working with you guys has been awesome about that because we're figuring out a basic budget compared to living like every day Saturday too, because we had like 5 years that we did everything we wanted to do.
Anything we wanted to do.
We went everywhere and we spent quite a bit. But then at this point we said, well, now let's look at this and look at what are the minimums. So the last year and a half, and especially with the wedding coming too, let's live basic. Let's not do tons. Let's just see what, with the inflation situation, where could we be and what adjustments, in case things do go bad on the back end, we could already know what we need to do when the legacy is out and we are, going into our sunset on how to live within a budget and live our dreams still, but still know what we need to do when times get a little tougher, because there's always tough times. I mean, the economy is up and it's down. That's how it's always been. But we feel more comfortable now because we have plans and we have people we trust. And we're sleeping a lot better. So,
well, thank you guys. You're so sweet. I feel appropriately buttered up. Also, I knew you were going to be incredibly inspiring. And you did that and then some, because there was this amazing depth to your story. And again, I feel like we just only scratched the surface. So I want to thank you again. This has been so amazing. I hope we get another chance to do this, to do a little bit of a deeper dive.
we would love to.
We'd love that.
But thanks so much for sharing. It's been an amazing run so far. I'll say cut to this segment of the movie.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get a part 2 coming soon.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Jim, Vicki, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Awesome.
If you like this video and it helped you, watch another one and don't forget to hit subscribe.